Okay, welcome to the second of these class streams. This is really aimed at my students at the University of Colorado, Denver. I'm teaching an introduction to audio production course. And if you're one of the students from that class and watching right now, make sure you put in the comments that you're here. I'd love to see which of you are watching. But also this stream will be made available later to the students for an assignment next week. Today, we're really going to be talking about production techniques, mixing techniques, I should say, the mixing part of the process. In the first stream, we did a lot with songwriting and looked at some of the tools available. I think this will be the last one of these streams where I'm using Logic, and we'll do another stream using some different software for the class in future streams. But Logic is the tool that I typically use, and I think the principles stay lined up, whether or not we're doing this or using some other tool. A lot of the techniques are the same. In the mix part of the process, there's a few different things that we're doing. We're setting levels. That's the volume of all the different parts. So how loud something should be comparatively with the other elements of your mix. Logic has a lot of tools for this. You can see in this view with the mixer, we've got these little faders that we can adjust up and down. In our track area, you'll see where it has the yellow lines here. Ooh, I don't have my zoom tool. Okay. The yellow lines, that is another way to control the level of things. And so we use those quite a bit. With this view, with the faders, that gives us a nice overview of everything that's happening in our mix in terms of the levels. But it's always most important to use our ears and listen and make sure that we know how loud something is. Then the next thing, or another thing that we often do in the mix process, is set the panning, the panorama. Panning talks about, in this case, with a stereo song, that means there's a left channel with one headphone and a right channel with another. And so we're having those two sides of our mix, all the way left, all the way right. If you're typically, listening to music on a home stereo, or even in most cars, you're hearing that left and right. Radio would have a left and right. Most streaming services have at least a left and right. Some of them have spatial audio, which does more, but we're just going to be talking about the left and the right. And then we have to actually choose what side something goes into. And so we have these little pan knobs. I'm moving one of them right by my shoulder there. All the way left, all the way right. And so we have to build our mix, not only in terms of levels, but also the panning, and decide which things get panned where. We'll talk a little bit about this particular song that I've pulled up. It's ready for a mix. It's not mixed yet. You'll see it has a lot of stuff on it, but that doesn't mean it's mixed yet. It just means when I was songwriting, I put a lot of stuff on it in terms of processing. Okay. After those two kind of main elements, the leveling, the panning, then we add a lot of processing. And the processing we break down into three main categories, just for us to be able to talk about it in a way that makes sense. We have our spectrum. That's like the part of the sound that goes from low to high and everything in between. So we can adjust the spectrum of instruments in the mix. We have our time effects, things that might be like an echo or a delay or the sound of a room that adds a reverb. So we have spectrum, timing, and then dynamics or levels. And so even though we talked about how we can adjust the level up and down, we can do more processing on the levels to make it more controlled. So let's just take a minute. This, like I said, this is a mix that's getting, or a song that's getting ready to be mixed, but it's not yet. And so you'll hear some rough edges for it. Part of the mix could involve some additional editing, But for the most part, I like to have most of that done by the time we get to this place. Although I think in this situation, the vocals might still need just a little bit, but we'll see. So here's the beginning of the song.
The snow was falling into the winter night. I looked for hours, but still I couldn't find the things that kept me warm and saved my life.
And so right off the bat, there's a number of things I'm hearing that I want to work on for this. I would say in this particular style of song, intelligibility of the lyrics is going to be really important. And my voice tends to be in the, a lower register, and it blends really nicely with a bunch of the other instruments. And so I've got to make sure that anybody hearing the song for the first time can actually understand what the words are saying. So that'll be one of my tasks, is making sure those vocals are in the right place. I don't have a ton of instruments, so the mix itself sounds to me like it's a nice full mix. Let me break down some of the things that are on my tracks here. The first thing would be these keys. I'm just going to loop a section. Right off the bat, this is clearly in the same range as my voice in many ways, so we're going to have to be really careful of that. So that's one element. I have some drums. I've already done some squashing to those. They sound really almost distorted. So we'll have a little work to do to make those fit. We have a bass part, bass synthesizer. And I've done one interesting technique on that. It must have been when I was recording it. That's kind of cool. And then 3 vocal parts.
When you close your eyes, you'll see things to make you wonder why.
And those are stylistically in line. You'll see all these other tracks that are right here. This was the original takes. And it looks like I eventually learned the parts and sang them again. But I've left the old ones there. And I might actually, for the sake of this, there's a key I can push, H. And then I can push H on each of these tracks that I'm not using. And I push H again and they disappear. There's one more up there. So now that cleans up our project a little bit more. There's another one right here that I'm not using. So we'll get rid of that stuff. Okay, cool. And then one more at the top. So I'm just going to hide some of that stuff that we don't need to see. It's still there, just hidden. A couple at the bottom. Okay. What is that one? That's the master track, so we'll leave that. Cool. Okay, so I've tightened up what we're seeing a little bit. That makes it a little bit easier to keep track of everything. Let's put the drums at the very top. We're going to organize just a hair. And then I have some other sounds that come in. What is this one called? Something. One of my favorite virtual instruments. And here's chunks. Oh, that's surprising.
Into the day, rose high.
Okay, so a little bit of organization took place just now. Let's start by just experimenting with a little bit of the level differences. Because I already have, looks like I did at least one automation. So automation is what this yellow line is called. And automation lets us change the volume in a way that's recorded that we can just play it back. So watch right here with this track, it has that yellow that goes down. Watch down on the track below while it goes down.
And so
I'll do it one more time. It actually moves those faders because the yellow line is drawing them.
And so I walked and walked.
I must have heard like a really loud S sound or something there and wanted it to be out of the way. So, but that means I can't just move a fader here for those ones. Because if I move a fader like that, if I push play, it goes back to where the yellow line is. So the yellow line, once you make one, if I want to make any changes, I have to do it there instead of down in what's called the mixer. So the mixer down here, just like, if you're using a KitchenAid mixer, you're putting everything together and stirring it up. That's, what this section does. It's the stirring section, I guess. But they're intertwined. They're connected together. So I can actually draw things. If I want something to be louder at this point, I can drag everything up and down like this. I don't remember where it was now. I think I can undo it, but I think it was at minus 0.3. No, I think that was at plus 0.3, 1.3. We're going to find out. I can always undo it, I guess.
For hours,
Yeah.
but still I couldn't find.
So we get to change those levels around until we're happy. How do we know where to put the levels? I mean, that's a trick. That's not necessarily super easy all the time. And that's partially because our ears are adaptive. That means we hear something. If we listen to something 10 times, it sounds different to us on the 10th time than it did on the first time. And so we have to understand a little bit how our ears work so that if we're listening to something 10 times, we still know kind of how to judge what it sounds like at the very end. In this case, I do things like turn the volume all the way down, or I have a knob out here on my audio interface that I can turn it down. It wouldn't change it for you, but it would change it for me, and I can listen really soft and then gradually turn it back louder. That's one technique to be able to hear the relationship between things. We can also just take a break, like work on it for like 45 minutes or half an hour, go do something else, grab a snack, go on a walk, whatever, and then come back and listen to it with fresh ears again. Once you get really close to the end, take a night off of it and listen to it the next day. Never be in a position where you have to give somebody the mix the minute you're done working on it, because you want to be able to double check it and make sure you weren't just feeling like it was done, but it really wasn't. So let's look at the drums for a minute. These drums, it's like an auto drummer kind of situation. I'm going to solo out. Soloing, by the way, means turning on one or more tracks and turning off everything else. So I'm going to solo out this track, the drummer track, and you'll see a bunch of the lights down here are still lit up. It's because all of the things on the drum kit, they were recorded separately, and this tool gives us all of those things. So I can actually mix all of the drum kit together, and I can just change one bit of it. So for instance, here's the kick, and the kick in and out are two different microphones, one that's inside the kick and one that's outside the kick. So I could change the spectrum with these tools called equalizers. That's very tony at the bottom there. Has a lot of like tone to it. More like a synthesized kick in some ways than an actual one. I wonder if I almost don't like the kick out. I'm going to mute it for the minute and just listen to it. Yeah, that's almost too much tone. And editorial decisions can be made in the mix, meaning if I'm like, ooh, I didn't really hear what that sounded like before, I want to change it. Snare sound. There's a top microphone and a bottom microphone that they've recorded this with. Cool. I mean, that sounds fine. If I want, I can change levels down here, or I can actually come into the kit and change some of the settings here as well. So I can actually turn down the snare. So I'm just listening to the different components of this, trying to get a feel for if I want to make or what changes I want to make. And I feel like I'm doing too much overall. So here are two effects that I'm putting on the drum kit as a whole. So all the pieces of the drums go through this. The first one is this EQ. I think this was a default, like a preset EQ that came when I put the drum kit on. I'm not positive, but I don't think this doesn't look like a curve that I would have made myself. And then I talked about, in addition to spectrum and time effects and processing, we have leveling or dynamics. And this is the dynamics tool. This is a compressor. If you think about those little faders I have in the mixer, and if I move one up and down to change the level, this essentially does the same thing, but you set up parameters and it does it like a robot. So it's very precise, or it can be, and it's very accurate, or it can be, and it follows the rules. And it's something you really couldn't replicate with a finger moving the fader up and down. But it shows us. So on the graph here, it's going to show you every time the volume is turned down and then as it goes back up. Watch the little graph section. So the kick and the snare and a couple other tom hits are really doing it, but the hi-hat isn't really triggering this. But it's doing a lot. It's pulling it down a lot. Now, you're not hearing exactly like that because there's a mix knob right above me, right there. And that mix knob, that is saying how much of this compressed signal or the change signal do we want to combine with the unchanged signal. So here's the unchanged signal. I'm going to turn that off, or the original. And then here's the one. I'm going to put this up at 100% so you can hear the fully compressed is what this is called. And then I put it at 50%, which means you're hearing 50% of the original plus 50% of the compressed, and you get something different. Makes it louder, but it also makes it like the compressed or the final dynamic range of this shallower. So I can make it louder, then actually make it even louder because I've made more room to make it louder. I don't know if we want to make this that loud. I just want it to fit with the rest of the style. So I'm going to actually turn the mix down to like 25% for a little bit. And then I'm going to listen, because the real truth is we can't just do this in a vacuum. We can't change any one instrument. We need to make sure that we listen to it combined with everything. So I've made it more natural, but now it's too soft, I think, for the rest of the mix. However, I don't have to just change it back. I can turn this part louder. Let's go back.
The snow was falling into the winter night. I looked for hours, but still I couldn't find.
Now, another thing I'm hearing right off the bat, because I'm starting with the drums a little bit, is that the drums are really dry. I mean, they're not 100% dry, because they have inside themselves a room. But it's not the best sounding room in the world. I mean, it's the room that they were recorded in, but it's just what it is. So, but you'll hear the voice. I put this thing called a reverb, and this is one of the time effects.
When you close.
So I hit stop, and you'll hear that tail. It may be even too long. Again, that would have been on from the recording session, and maybe that's not what we want for the actual final thing. But the drums don't have anything like that. So we need to come through and add that room sound more consistently on the tracks. And I want to see exactly what we have loaded here. It's a synthol. I'm going to change it right off the bat because I'm really into... Let's see, the vocal plate right now. I'm just going to get rid of some of the lower parts of that, the low frequency rumble and a little bit of the upper part. And then we use this system called bussing. Now, bussing is one of the harder techniques that I'm going to explain to you today. Essentially, if you look at any one of these, what are called channel strips, so the part that just got lit up right over there. These little things, the processing that I add are called plugins. And I get to put plugins on there and they change the sound. Anything goes through them can be altered. Down below, there's this thing called sends. They're like right here, this row where it says this little blue one. I can't really see. It's this row, like right there, that I pointed to. Those I can send a copy of my sound to something else. So I have one channel strip over here that's just for this thing called reverb. That's the space around the sound. And the input, I say, is bus, in this case, bus 6. And if I want to add the drums into that, which I do for the moment, I just choose bus 6 from their send and turn it up a little bit. Now, I'm going to solo out the drums. You hear how it has a sound now? I'm going to turn it off. Cool. Let's turn it back on. I'm not sure that's the right one, but we're going to be experimenting with it. I'm going to just listen to the reverb now with everything going to it. And then I do want to add these other three things, and then we're going to need to do a little work because it's a little chaotic in there. We might end up doing a different one for the drums, or just keeping it down a little bit. Okay, another technique. So drums, I'm going to leave them for a second. I need to continue to that a little bit, but for me, mixing is like a spiral. I'm spending some time on areas that I'm hearing and then moving around in a spiral, hopefully ever getting closer to the center. And I think for me, the vocals is going to be really, they are going to be really important for me to kind of nail this down. Now I've got vocals in this thing called like a summing folder, track stack. So they're all going through this one track right here. Let's see. Cancel for now. Okay.
Looking for ways to run to the world that isn't real.
But that means any effect that I put on this track, all of the vocals are going to go through it that are in this stack. So I have this thing, it's called a vocal strip, and it has vocal type plugins.
When you close your eyes, you'll see things to make you wonder why.
It's doing things like adjusting my dynamic range. It's taking out some of the S's, sibilants, and it's doing a deploser, which is anything that's like a puff of air. It can work with those. So it's doing some basic vocal help for me. And then I have a channel EQ afterwards. And I might actually boost up a little bit of EQ with this just to make it so I can understand and maybe remove some parts. But we're going to have to talk about how EQ is reciprocal in just a minute.
The light at the end is me. Wonder why we took so long to feel. It's not a ghost of things long gone. Things we thought we knew were real. It's the ghost of things.
So maybe those are a little brighter, but we may have to come through some of our other instruments. Say we'll do this section right here. So you can see I'm already cutting a lot of this frequency range, but I might need to actually do a little bit more just because, I mean, my voice is it's not like in a great range for this instrument. So I'm really boosting up the high stuff to make it pop through. That may be too much, but I just wanted to hear it. I want more of the high stuff to cut through above my voice in some ways and less of the stuff that's overlapping.
eyes, you'll see things to make you wonder why. The light at the end is me. Wonder why we took so long to feel. It's not a ghost of things long gone. The things we thought we knew were real. It's the ghost of things to me.
And then the bass part, I think it's doing something epic here. I mean, that's not really a bass part at all. It's just another synth part. So two things I'm doing with this one right now. Probably I would have set this up in the recording for sure. One of them is this thing called a stereo spread, and it like rips apart the sound and spreads it out to give you a more interesting stereo image. And then the other thing is I've got a compressor on here, but it is side chaining. And I'll explain what a sidechain is as soon as I find out where it's coming from. Vocal main. Okay. So this is the same one we looked at just a minute ago. But you'll see the shape of what's being pulled down doesn't match the shape of the instrument, right? That's like a more consistent thing. So there's this thing called a sidechain, which lets me analyze something else. So in this case, it's analyzing the vocal, and then it's pulling this instrument softer every time the vocal is singing. It's a great technique to help things fit a little bit better together. I don't know how well it's working yet. In this case, let me listen again.
It's not a ghost of things long gone. The things we thought we knew were real. It's the ghost of things to be. And now.
So it's working when the lead vocal part is there, but then that counter melody comes in and it's no longer really doing it. So I think I got to see if I can change this to something else. Bus 3. This means it'll actually get all of those instead of just the lead parts.
It's not a ghost of things long gone. The things we thought we knew were real. It's the ghost of things to be. And now I know it's time to feel. It's not a ghost of things.
I'm not sure I grabbed the right thing yet. Let me double check it. Bus 3. That was all of those things. It's too much. So let's change that side chain. Put it back to where it was for now. I'll have to figure that out. Or maybe group two of them separately.
It's not a ghost of things long gone. The things we thought we knew were real. It's the ghost of things to be.
And that synth part overall, which is called bass, but it's not really a bass, it's too loud. And I need an actual bass part.
It's not a ghost of things.
Let's listen to the bridge section for a minute and hear what that does. It's a different bass thing, but it's still the same instrument, I think.
Left alive, together, together forever. The light at the end. You can't go back. I changed your locks together. The key is not a ghost. Left alive, together, together forever. The light at the end. You can't go back. I changed.
Another instrument got added down at the bottom. I don't remember what that is either. Oh, strings, of course. And that's an example I can't even hear. So there's a couple things over time that I haven't been able to fully hear. But I don't know if I want to or if they just get in the way.
Left alive, together, together forever. The light at the end. You can't go back. I changed your locks together. The key is not a ghost.
And let's hear that through the last chorus.
Left alive, together, together forever. The light at the end. You can't go back. I changed your locks together. The key is not a ghost. When you close your eyes, you'll see things to make you wonder why. The light at the end is me. Wonder why we took so long to feel. It's not a ghost.
Okay, cool. Before I forget, there's the other chunk section in the middle here that I don't think I had that right either.
Into the day, the sun rose high above. The icy snow that fell began to melt away. Looking for words to feel, things to try and start to heal. Looking for ways to run to the world that isn't real.
Okay, so there's a couple things happening with this one. This is a good time to look back at some of the fundamentals we started with. So we have the drums, right? We're going to leave the drums off for a minute. I've got this synth part that I called the bass. Key part. So that last part only ever comes in the second verse, even though there's a part for it in the first verse. It looks like I didn't use it, maybe to make the song feel like it's building, which is an important songwriting thing, right? The keys, the first electric piano is in the left side. And then this other, like a lap guitar kind of esque sampled sound is in the right. But I want to take those more to the extreme, I think. So we're always seeking balance between what's happening in the different speakers, if it's left and right, It's like what things should be here, what things should be there, so they're not on each other's toes, but that there's balance. And then I do things like where there's the bass in the middle, the keys in the left, this other guitarish type thing in the right, and then I add this whole chunky thing. And this may be an example of a time that I actually want to use that thing that rips the sound apart and spreads it out. So this gets spread among all of the left and the right. I'm not sure. Let's try it once. Some really interesting like mouse sounds in there, but let's see if we can actually hear those in the mix.
Into the day, the sun rose high above. The icy snow that fell began to melt away. Looking for words to feel, things to try and start to heal. Looking for ways to run to the world that isn't real. Into the day.
And let's hear that as it goes into the chorus.
Into the day, the sun rose high above. The icy snow that fell began to melt away. Looking for words to feel, things to try and start to heal. Looking for ways to run to the world that isn't real. When you close your eyes, you'll see things to make you wonder why. The light at the end is me. Wonder why we took so long to feel. It's not a ghost of things long gone. The things we thought we knew were real. It's the ghost of things to be. And now we know it's time to deal.
Okay. Some of the things I'm thinking about are working better now. But this is the process. It's like, I'm not done. I've got a lot more to do. I've got to keep on going back through. I want to check the vocals in the first verse section for a minute and show you some of the techniques around vocals specifically.
The snow was falling into the wind. The snow was falling.
So one of the fallings is a little bit off.
The snow was falling.
It's like I sang it differently. So we have flex pitch, which lets me come through,
The snow was falling.
and I can do something like this where I change the timing.
The snow was falling.
Let me hear that with both.
The snow was falling. The snow was falling.
And then let me do the other one real quick because I feel like I can change that one.
The snow was falling.
Let's change the falling out a little bit.
The snow was falling.
Oh, I could hear it just a little too much.
The snow was falling into the winter night. I looked for how
there. There's a little, it's like that level of perfection, I think, or the ability to control at that level, I think is nice.
Morning light.
Let's do these ones over a little bit. I don't know. I might have to change those.
Morning light.
Yeah, let's undo all of that.
Morning light. Morning light.
Let's just, nope. It is this one here.
Morning light.
But let me change to this track for a second.
Morning light. Morning light.
And then we'll go earlier.
Morning light.
Let's try a big change.
Morning light.
Bigger.
The morning light.
So then I just changed the whole syllable play.
And walked until the morning light. When you close your eyes, you'll see things to make you wonder why. The light at the end is me. Wonder why we took so long to feel. It's not a ghost of things long gone. Things we thought we knew were real. It's the ghost to feel. It's not a ghost.
Let me just see with that ghost part there. I have a really big g sound. So that's, I think, it right where my mouse is.
Not a ghost.
Oof. And there's no square on that because it's not a pitched element. So I think in this case, what it's going to be better to do is go in a little bit here. Let's just delete a little bit of it. Bring it back a hair, but fade it.
Not a ghost of things long gone.
And did I do the top part or the bottom part? Let's find out.
Not a ghost of
No, that was the right one. Okay. Just a hair. Just getting rid of that really ghost sound.
It's not a ghost.
And then in the mix.
It's not a ghost of things long gone. Things we thought we knew were real. It's the ghost of things to be. And now I know it's time to deal. Into the day, the sun rose high above. The icy snow that fell began to melt away. Looking for words to feel, things to try and start to heal. Looking for ways to run to the world that isn't real. When you close your eyes, you'll see things to make you wonder why.
And then some of those, that phrase right there, I think I need to just gain up that whole reply section a little bit because it's not coming through.
Things to make you see, things to make you wonder why. The light at the end is me. Wonder why we took
but let's build in one of these automation lines so that last one is actually fading out. And then let's see. Minus 2.7 is where the other ones were, so we'll put it back over around there. There. Let's hear that.
So long to feel it's not a ghost of things long gone. The things we thought we knew were real. It's the ghost of things to be. And now it's time to close your eyes. To things to be. And now we'll know it's time to close your eyes. Left our lives together forever. The light at the end. You can't go back and change your locks together. The key is not a ghost. When you close your eyes, you'll see things to make you wonder why. The light at the end is me. Wonder why we took so long to feel. It's not a ghost of things long gone. The things we thought we knew were real.
And then I did add a fade in or a fade out at some point. I must have done like a rough mix to listen to it a bunch and just threw a fade out. That fade out would usually happen after the mix was done. But sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I want to hear how close I'm getting every time I do an export and make it sound like the real thing. So at the beginning, already from the beginning of the day till now, just what I changed with a little bit of the bass, the panning of that one kind of guitarish sound, and the overall drum sounds a lot better. It sounds a lot more natural. And so I'm feeling it's going to sound more natural. What I need to do is listen to the whole thing. And then once I get like my relative stuff here, one of the next part of the process we'd have to talk about is mastering, which sometimes you do in other programs and sometimes you do in the program you're doing the mix in. In my case, we'll be doing it in here, just not today. I want to talk about getting levels right for things like the streaming services and making sure that what you hear in this place will be what you hear if you put it on Spotify or Apple Music. But like I said, that's for a different day. I think this is a great place to stop the stream. More of everything is what we'd be doing next. More fine-tuning of all these parts, making sure the vocals are in the right place, changing a few of the word timings if we need to, making sure that the spectrum, the timing elements, and the overall dynamic range are all in the right place, so that we can hear all the parts of the song that we want, that we can enjoy the music without being distracted, and that we can just like stomp our feet when we're hearing something we like. So that's an overview, a 55-minute overview of the process. There's more to it, but I think this is a great starting place. So that's it. And let's pull the plug on the stream.